So where does that leave us? So our real topic is agentic video. Now that the human can be almost completely removed from the loop, how does that change the perception and distribution of slop? So agentic video, and this could be, a human instigated, a human in the loop, or entirely out of the loop if it's just a content generator motor. It depends on the user, and there's tremendous opportunity for creativity. That's kind of the space that we're in. And then there's people who are just making dime on pumping out mindless content and paying their rent that way. Not what I'm interested in, but on the other hand, I like the money. So who knows? So let's talk about where we are right now with agentic video and agents in general. And I'll probably do a deeper dive into agentic stuff at the tech group meeting later this month. But today we'll keep it fairly high level. So traditional AI, traditional in the last 3 years, chatbots solving problems for us is the model that people have been using for the past couple of years. You ask a question, the AI answers, maybe you continue the conversation and you're done. Yeah, generate an image of a cat. Easy enough. But agentic AI has a loop, right? Agentic AI can figure stuff out. It can perceive these days. We'll talk about that. It can reason, it can act, and it can observe. So create a video series about cats that will appeal to my target audience. We can do that fairly automatically these days. Will they be good videos? Not necessarily, but as we've seen, slop is in the eye of the beholder. Maybe the LLM will, or has in some cases, progressed to the point where we can get good stuff out of the LLM. So when we talk about agents, we talk about this, agency, the 70-year journey to agency, from Turing coming up with this stuff in the 50s to various models and AI models that came out in the 80s and the 90s. Then there was this AI desert from the mid-90s to about 2010 or so. And then we suddenly started to see some actual result. And there's plenty of AI and machine learning stuff going on in research at that time. It was just mostly in the back end. But then financial models especially. But that was all machine learning and pattern detection stuff, not what I generally consider AI. I make a differentiation between machine learning and artificial intelligence, and we've definitely crossed that bridge recently. So it was, we had Alexa come out when voice recognition became practical. It took a long time for voice recognition to actually work at the level of Alexa and Siri and all that, as stupid as they turned out to be. And the perception developed, being able to see, but not in a verbal sort of way. It's really the verbal stuff that has taken us over the bridge. And that really came about just from the 2018 paper, All You Need Is Attention, when we started to get the outlines of what transformer logic and transformer machines and LLMs can actually start to reason. And it turns out that next token prediction, which is what that does, approximates reasoning as it gets more and more sophisticated. So we had various things have happened in the past couple of years. So we actually looked at this in this group a couple of years ago when this first started coming out. First, we had improvements using chain of thought. Just telling it to pay attention to what you're doing actually improved the output there. Let's think it step by step, actually encouraged it to think it step by step and getting better results. Later that year, we had React come out, which has a loop, as we just saw, which goes from reasoning to action. And it started to introduce the concept of tooling. At this point, everything was very primordial. That is, the LLMs were not powerful enough to really understand what you were saying in 2022 and 2023 and even in 2024. So all the React stuff and the tools were also not very developed. So you had a framework there that could not be well implemented. And you had things like we looked at the time, Baby AGI and AutoGPT, which had that React loop going on, but didn't actually get very far because, one, it couldn't really understand what it was doing, and two, the tooling wasn't there to actually implement when it wanted to figure stuff out. Web searches cannot, solve all the problems that there are. And the agents of the time, the LLMs simply were not deep enough to do so. LangChain, we've had agents for a long time, LangChain is a good way, has always been a good way to develop agents. It's sort of been internally replaced with LangGraph and other models since then that provide more power and maybe have a better internal model. But you could build agents with LangChain, and you could start bringing up your own tools and such. Again, the power was limited because the power of the LLMs was limited. Certainly could not understand deep stories at that point, but it could do some things. What's happened recently is the opposite of what I just said. That is, in 2025 and 2026. And remember, OpenAI o1 is only a year and some old, and that was the first real deep reasoning model that had a better understanding, and we're several generations past then, and we're at the point now where the better frontier LLMs do have a deep understanding of your prompt, and that's of what you're saying. And you can give a long prompt and it'll understand it, something that was unheard of in 2023 and 2024. So that technology has improved. The harness, the systems that surround it have also improved, as well as the tooling. So you can only get so far without powerful LLMs, and you can only get so far without a powerful agent framework that's surrounding it to actually implement this stuff. And more recently, this is kind of out of order, but I'll do it anyway. So you have the ability to add tools, and the most basic tool, which has been out for a while, is the search tool. But there are a whole bunch of tools which can be linked into an LLM, which give it various services. Math services, different types of lookup, financial services, database access, and then last year. Anthropic introduced MCP, which is sort of a meta tool system, which lets any LLM gives access to thousands of tools simply by defining it. So MCP adds a tremendous amount of power to what the LLM can actually access. And now it's easy to add thousands of different tools, including video tools, including avatar tools and music tools, and have an LLM drive that. So this is where everything connects now with the agentic technology that's come out in 2025 and which is going to go further in 2026, and why we are now thinking about, fully agent-driven systems. We're not there yet, but this is the connections that are being made. The more powerful LLMs combined with the more powerful tooling gives us a tremendous amount of power, and MCP just extends this to thousands of tools that can be used. So for a creative agent, or really any agent here, the orchestrator is the LLM. That is the prompt that we're giving to the LLM. And the first part here is that the LLM can now understand your prompts to a degree that it can actually understand your goals, which, go back 2 years and you're going to be frustrated trying to get the LLM to do what you actually wanted. It can plan sequences. It can actually select the tools to solve the problem, because it has this deeper representation of the world, or at least the tool using world. And then it can get the results back from the tools and can do this in sequence in a logical way and think problems through. That includes problems like writing a script for a video, as well as any number of other non-video problems, as well as audio. So the tools that are available now are the tools that have come out since 2022, powerful stuff like Flux and Runway and Kling and VO and Suno for audio, and web research and the ability to run arbitrary code within a sandbox. And if you look at it now, interestingly enough, Anthropic was so hot on not providing computers direct access to the computer itself, because that obviously then the LLM can write self-modifying code, but now they're all in on that. So that didn't last very long. So the code interpreters have a sandbox, but now it can actually control your browser and therefore your IDE and can do whatever it likes. So now if we want to write a script and implement the script, the LLM understands, especially, they've all gotten much better at writing. Claude has always had the best reputation for writing. I think the recent Opus is actually pretty good at writing. And then actually planning out what it would have to do to actually create the video. So the workflow engine, which is what the execution layer that surrounds the LLM, because LLMs cannot do anything by themselves except their internal thinking and next token prediction. But what they can do is talk to to the workflow engine and the clients that they're attached to. So if the LLM decides as part of its sequence that it wants to do a web search, or I want to create a video, it will give that instruction to the outer layer that's actually executing stuff that will actually call the tools and pass it back to the LLM, and the LLM will then know how to process that and continue in its sequence. That's because the LLMs are deeper in their understanding now, and also much better able to carry out a complicated sequence of stuff, which wasn't true in the past. So when we apply this to creative output in 2026, we have a lot more power to actually write scripts and put together videos, and we're starting to see the results of that. So we have an example general pattern here for creating agentic video. We understand what we want to do. Maybe the human gives a topic, maybe it gives a primordial script for improvement, or maybe it's just a couple of words, which a lot of systems have existed actually. Like we covered in video, like just a year and a half ago. InVideo could take a concept and turn it into a script, and then turn that script into shots. At the time, InVideo was selling stock footage, so it would do a meta search to find the proper stock footage to tell your story. Now it's switched to generative video, and their whole business model at the time was selling stock footage, right? Now they've switched to a combination and largely favoring generative video, so they can take a couple words and turn that into a video. So can other systems like LTX, and there's others. There's a lot of the consolidation products do a lot of can put together these stories. Are they good? No. In 2023, they're not good. In 2024, they're not great. In 2025, they're a little bit better. In 2026, we may get some decent coherency. And that's when you see, these historical stories that are being told that may or may not be good for education will get to the point where they are good. So here's an example of an agentic video pattern. Understand the goal. Let's say I want to write a story about the Battle of Teutoburg Forest, an old battle of Rome where Varus was completely destroyed and lost 3 eagles. It can do that research, and it can write the script. It can convert that script to a shot list, and then it can take that shot list and generate the videos, animate the clips, add the voice, and assemble it. And that's something that, I would do manually, hopefully with a little bit of creativity and skill, if I wanted to do this sort of educational video. At what point will the agent be able to do a reasonable job? Hopefully not at the creative level that we can produce today, but definitely at the creative level of your average thing that might have been produced by a company which is just trying to put stuff out to fill an educational contract. So this, and this can all be defined, which is what we're going to look at, as a sequence of things that the LLM figures out, sometimes from a prompt or perhaps from a sequence of prompts. But they've gotten intelligence enough to do it with a single prompt now, which, let's get back to that. So this is a basic scheme which you would follow manually to actually put something together, and now the agents are complex enough to actually do this. So what is the moat here? When does it become a creative multiplier versus a spam factory? The same tools. Again, this is not well defined because it's the same question, what is slop and what is not slop? It depends on the context. It depends upon the end user who's going to work on it. So really, the role for the humans, and maybe the agents eventually, is to be the curator here so that you know that you're not producing slop. But that is both a function of the person who's producing it and the reception that people are showing it, which, as we've seen, a lot of people are willing to put up with slop from AI and crap from Hollywood. So that's a brief overview of why agentic video is now possible. And this also applies to many other areas, but it's only recently where the tooling and the workflows and the agent's capability can actually produce half-decent videos, and we can see the trajectory there and what's likely to happen in 2026. Now, I'm not going to get into video details. We'll do that at some other time. We've talked about it in the past. People don't look. There's still the uncanny valley. You can't do real interpersonal interaction scripts. But if you avoid that, you can produce decent things. And we've looked at some decent productions before. They were human-driven and creative. But as the agents learn more about this stuff and are better able to handle that, maybe they will reach that level of creativity. I'm thinking of the Kira clone bit, which I really liked. I think we showed that one time or two ago, which was done by a person using the tooling. But has no personal interactions within the actual video, which is the weakness of video AI right now. But if you can program that in and understand that context, then you can get a lot more out of it. So before I go to the actual engineering stuff that I want to cover, any questions about agentic process or agentic video and where that's going? Any thoughts? How many of you guys have actually worked with any of the agentic stuff like NVIDIA or LTX or written the script and had the LLM write the script entirely? What's your experience with that?
I just started working with this kind of stuff, so my experience has been very limited to Firefly. I've also messed with Sora, just proof of concept stuff, and then just open source tools that are out there, just mess around.
What scripting in particular?
Not necessarily with scripting. So like I'll I have a very custom workflow, which is probably atypical of any sort of like real production process. But I'll use, for instance, a custom GPT for a particular workflow to generate a script, and then from there I'll see which type of work I'm doing and which image generation tool can I use as like my first frame for a video, and then I use that as a basis to then evolve and add multiple things to it, whether that's sound, whether that's video, whether that's audio, as in voiceover, and I kind of stitch it all together manually.
Okay, so the question is, at what point will that be automatable in a quality fashion?
Correct.
And that's really what we're thinking about today.
Right.
I've created scripts with LLMs, and I find 80% of the AI is okay, and 20% has to be human changed. That's been.
And AIs are, the LLMs, and again, particularly Claude series, have been good as writing assistants.
Yeah.
You don't want to take their output. I would still never take their output, but I might be inspired by it. I might use it as a starting point.
It works 80%. In other words, I've taken their output.
Yeah.
So 80%.
Oh, I know that's not uncommon.
Is a high. I think it's high. Their script writing is good now. 80% good is my feeling. It depends. I mean, you have to write in the style of Paddy Chayefsky, in the style of J.D. Salinger or something, and it's 80% is good.
But then you give it notes and you give it feedback. It comes back with
A couple of times.
You work drafts with it. Or?
A couple of times, but I usually do it. I edit it myself.
Yeah.
Usually once it spits out that. A few times maybe back and forth, but I end up doing 20% me and 80% the AI, and it's good. It worked depending on one's taste, obviously.
Yeah.
If you like Paddy Chayefsky from 1970s or something.
I wonder how much people would detect that as slop. At what point, will they see the patterns? And ChatGPT was known for doing a lot of common patterns, but that changes over time. 5.2 is a lot better at not doing that than it used to be, and Claude has always been a little bit better. And Opus 4.5 is getting rave reviews, so it's a target in motion as far as the quality of the scripts, and that's core to that sequence that we had up there before. It has to write a good script to be interesting, and then it has to write a script that it can actually be executed well by the tools that are there.
Yeah, I have a follow up on like your workflow for the 20% that you're talking about. Is that like creativity that you're giving to the prompt, or do you find that like the LLMs themselves inspire creativity? Because that's something that I struggle with. That I feel like I encapsulate myself into relying too much on AI, and then if I work backwards from my process, oftentimes I find myself being way more creative, way more thinking out of the box. But again, with prompting, you can kind of get there. But I'm curious to see what your process is.
don't use. I'm a writer as well as an animator. So I'm a writer. I've become a writer on it. So though if I wrote it, I edit my own stuff. I change it. I make sure it doesn't have that repetition that AI falls into sometimes.
Yeah.
So I change all that, change it up, because I'm a writer, so I'm able. I can see it's like a first draft or something, so I make
Sure.
it, do the draft. It works well. I think it's amazing, actually, for my uses as a writer.
Yeah, no, it's great as a creative assistant,
Yeah.
and you can use it to a greater or lesser extent, and that will get greater. So the whole agentic process, not just agentic video, is, as you've certainly seen in the papers and on the web, a major thing that's impacting a lot of industries as agents are more able to take over, human processes. Video just being one of them, and one of the more difficult ones because you're watching it right there.
What would define agent? I'm a little confused.
Well, the definition really, it's a fuzzy definition. So you could say that a chatbot is an agent, but really an agent is something that can use tools. An agent has the ability to actually take actions, or at least make its own decisions.
The resources.
Yeah, it's able to leverage resources. So the definition is not. I don't want to get too deep into this, but some people say that to be a real agent, everything has to be done by the LLM. I differ with that opinion. I think that you can still have a architectural structure for a process that includes LLMs and still be an agent. And in fact, that's a more powerful type of agent. So the definition is not entirely clear, but what we're seeing as an agent is something that is able to orchestrate, something that's able to use tools, and actually create something more complex. But I won't get into that. We could go far with that.
Process?
Again, it can be.